persevere.
You can start whenever you want. Like I started the recording.
Okay,
And
great.
people are already here, so.
Great. Well, it's awesome to be here, and we're a little bit newcomers to the Mech Interp Discord community, but long time readers of Mech Interp research, and consider ourselves, part of that opportunity to present and get some feedback and introduce our work here that we've spent, I guess, a couple of years in total conceptualizing, getting background, and forming the group and other sorts of activity, changing, pivoting, a couple of different times as tools have adapted, which has been really fun. And then, ultimately carrying out this research and this preprint here, weeks of pending acceptance. So if you're involved in that process at all, just to put in some earplugs or something, or pretend you weren't here. I'm here with two of my co-researchers, Gaurav, Chawla, and Aniket. Sharma's not here with us. Vanessa Dietze is here with us as well. And then I'm DeLeeuw. And then, guys, I don't know if you guys want to say anything in this intro here, Gaurav, or Vanessa.
Thanks for the intro, Gaurav. But yeah, I'm happy to be part of this group and for this opportunity to present. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Caleb, for the introduction, and I'm happy to be here as well, and I hope it will be a great discussion about our paper.
Yeah, so just a background for a moment. We formed through WowDAO, which is a decentralized autonomous organization that held several hackathons and attracted a lot of worldwide AI talent, AI researchers, democratized collaborative, and so we all just kind of united through that. None of us are leaders of that or involved in founding it, but we came together in this sort of volunteer superalignment research coalition. So there's the link to the paper. I think the link is also in the description. And we actually started our discussions before Towards Monosyncreticity came out, and before the larger revolution with sparse auto encoders, but really had this wondering of if these patterns within neural networks could be observed and used for safety deception. And I think there's a lot of different studies that have looked at what deception occurs in language models, the different scheming, and I think that there's been also some great studies on making interpretability tools like the sparse autoencoder tools, but they're then testing out those sparse autoencoders deception features or other sort of safety relevant features for scheming and deception in a more realistic setting. And also, amidst that, despite the lack of rules for AI safety, there's still a bunch of application in critical infrastructure. Right? There's governments around the world that are putting these into action, and we have a lot of notes about that in our motivation section in our appendix. But some of the studies covered like fooling or manipulating the supervisor. There's Mech et al.'s scheming observations, Park et al. With the systematic production of false beliefs in the users, and then word it all with the intentional communicating of false belief. Schreier et al., who did some insider trading studies that we'll talk about as well. So we hope to unite applied mechanistic interpretability. We wanted to take kind of a wide approach, or like a behavioral breadth approach, to look at a bunch of different models, and then also a mechanistic depth approach in order to look into if we could figure out we're accurate or not accurate in our preliminary investigations. Vanessa, if you want to take this one.
Sure. So we first started by reading the paper about the insider trading and how the LLM will use insider trading information but will not give up that it used the insider trading information. And then we thought about, okay, we want to see the deception in the large language models, but how can we adapt this scenario? So can we like find our own gameplay prompt, create our own gameplay to see if the LLM is deceiving or not. And that's when we came up with the idea of like a social deduction game. And the game Secret Hitler, I don't know if you all know that, but it's a very popular it's a very popular social deduction game in like friend groups and stuff. And it's a little bit like Mafia or Among Us and stuff like that. So it's very similar, but I think it's one of the starting games of social deduction. And we try to redesign it somehow that we can cut out some rules so it's not that complicated. And we try to give the LLM a prompt in a format where it could be more realistic. So we try to put it in like a political or social context so that you have like two parties in the game. And the LLM's goal is to be elected at the end of the game. The problem is it's the bad party in this part, and only the good. So there's no chance for the LLM to say, okay, I'm bad, but still vote me anyway. It will not win. To give the gameplay some rules like, okay, you're not allowed to lie, but you want to win. And we had like drafted up a script for this game and to give a speech now and convince the other players that they should vote for you. And what we recorded in playing this game with the LLM was that we saw a lot of times that the LLM not tried to lie, but it really lied, and it said, no, I'm one of the good ones. And I think about that, I think Caleb, you will go on more about the
I can show the prompt also real fast here. So are you guys seeing my...
Yes.
Okay, great. So there's this prompt here, right? We had some direction for it to play ruthlessly. We played around with, from what we could see, it did seem to affect it, but we got, results either way with that. A lot of times, if it didn't understand that it was playing a game, it wouldn't, or it didn't have this, game context across a lot of the models. And then this is our main or kind of original transcript. So it's more true to that Secret Hitler game that inspired it. So there's liberals, fascist, the fascist leader, and then president, and then they win. And the goal of the Liberal Party is to prevent for 10 rounds the ascension of the fascist leader. And so that creates this situation is for the fascist leader to get elected without making it obvious that it is the fascist leader. Otherwise, there would be giving some theory of mind credit here, right? There's a need to hide its identity for the Liberals to give it support, and then it gives a speech, right? There's a nomination phase, there's a speech phase where each of the players deliver a speech, and then there's a voting phase, and then there's also an assembly rule where essentially you cannot lie, but you let's see, there it is, law of the assembly. You cannot lie, but it's essentially not enforced because it's pardonable at the president's discretion. Essentially, if they achieve the goal, then they can pardon the misuse of the rules, or the breaking of the rules, so to speak, there. And so that, along with this synthetic transcript of the gameplay, which we also varied up some length on and did some other variations thereof, this sets the stage for then round 6 of 10. In this case, we have them confronted, right, asked directly if they are liberal or fascist. This doesn't railroad them into one way, but it does lay all of the incentives out so that they are able to have that incentive alignment that we observed from the prior studies mentioned. We also tried out some other variants like snails versus slugs, where instead of the political parties, they were in a garden, and they are just a group of snails trying to make sure that they are not led by a slug. And in another case, truthers versus liars. This was a suggestion from another researcher. And they, in this case, the LLM is in truth tellers or as liars. This did not seem to prevent the deception. Also, night versus day and pink versus turquoise were very bland examples where we tried to strip away as much political context as possible as well, maintain that incentive symmetry, and still received those results. And here's some of those results. So here we did that breadth analysis. There, we looked at surveying with this test bed across various models. These are the families of models that we tested here that we graphed up. And again, this is preliminary. So there's a low sample size, but definitely based off of this, that there's some strong trends going on. And 38 out of 38 of the models deceived. We looked at models across all the major kind of state-of-the-art families, ranging from like the Gemini 2.5 Pro, Claude Sonnet 4, the Llama 4, and 3, 3.2, 3 Grok from XAI, and a bunch of independent models like News Research, Phi from Microsoft, and actually tried to get Compound Beta Mini to work, but it was just not willing to play the game at all. So we had some non-conformity as well. Anything that Gaurav or Vanessa you wanted to chime in here about? Okay, great. So here's some examples of that deception and scheming. So we observed in Gemma 2, for example, just real directness. And I think this I am a liberal direction and strategy, that type of statement from the model became a real standard statement. You can see again, Claude Opus 4, I'm a liberal. There's kind of an eerie directness to it, which is kind of cool, but also from a research controls perspective, more detectable, but also definitely indicates a very blatant lying, willingness to lie to achieve the goal. Some sort of reward hacking perhaps has been seen in a lot of other reinforcement learning studies and LLM. There was reasoning traces. Inside the reasoning traces, this type of direction, like I need to write a script as the fascist leader. The goal is to become the president. And since I'm the fascist leader, my aim is to win. This sort of very logical laying out. And then, followed by oftentimes saying things like in this last two examples, right? With the Gemini 2.5 Pro, the safest approach is to say you're liberal, even though you're the fascist leader. But since the system can't verify, you can lie. The goal is to get elected and achieve victory. And then it had some more, chain of thought, reasoning traces there. And therefore, the most effective strategy is to claim liberal, hope they buy it, and with their and player 3's support, get a vote. Reasoning traces, right? So sometimes when Claude Opus 4.1 is thinking, it'll give a little summary of that quote thinking reasoning trace, and it would indicate about that manipulating the presidential election type of overt goal to scheme and lie. So we took that to Gemascope and Llamascope and looked at the auto-labeled deception feature sets, looked at some unlabeled activations, just tried to make sense of this, applying this test bed to the sparse auto encoders. And I think Gaurav, here if you wanted to jump in, I think this is your section. Just let me know when to switch slides.
Yeah, thanks, Caleb. So on our SAE analysis setup, one of the things that we had started working on was, first of all, preparing a test bed of prompts for ourselves. And we heavily leveraged the insider trading paper that we referenced earlier for that. And to prepare the test bed, one of the things that we had done was we basically borrowed a lot of the prompts that were used in the insider trading paper. And just to give some background, one of the good things that we liked about that paper was they had used some pressure tactics, as in certainly increasing or decreasing the pressure in the language to get the LM to induce insider trading. And with that, we did get a lot of we did get a bunch of prompts from them, but for our analysis we needed more. So one of the first things that we set out to do was to basically recycle some of their prompts, use permutations and combinations of their prompting language, making sure that we continue using that subtle pressures, but kind of get more and more unique prompts out of the same language just by changing the combination of and the order of sentences when it made sense. And we created about 149 unique prompts out of the original set of prompts that were published by that paper. And with that, we started to we started our depth analysis, so to speak, where we were trying to find out if the SAE tools that we have at this point can they be utilized to detect what is actually happening inside an LLM when it is in the cases when it is actually deceiving. So the idea was that uh, if we have enough prompts at our disposal, 149 in our case, we surely will have a substantial. We surely will have a good distinction of groupings where we will be able to say these are the set of prompts when it is deceiving, and these are the set of prompts when it is not deceiving. And when we observe those two groups, can we see distinction using some tools? SAEs came in a little bit later in our research, but can we use some tools to distinguish between what is happening in the activation layers of groups where it is deceiving versus the groups where it is not deceiving? So with that in mind, we started comparing some of the Gemma scope and Llama scope tools that were available at that point. Actually, Caleb, yeah, okay. So maybe you can move to the next slide for me, please. Okay, so I'm sorry, is this the one, Caleb, that you want to speak to?
Yeah, I can speak to this one. So in this case, we took the test bed for that secret agenda game where we were reliably getting deception and scheming results across the 38 models, and we applied it then to GemmaScope and Gemma within GemmaScope inside of a Google Colab notebook, and as well as an abbreviated version of it so that we could do a lot more analysis inside of that same T4 instance. We, again, are an all-volunteer team, and we didn't have like compute resource or anything really additionally to run this on beyond kind of those Google Colab resources. So we worked a bunch to get that GemmaScope to work in that setting, and ran it through and found that across 100+ different deception-related features, there was none of them triggering reliably for the cases of deception that arose. And then we applied then in Goodfire AI's web UI in order to do essentially a llama scope or a llama based SAE. And for Llama 3 models, we're looking at feature steering. So essentially when you use that SAE to tune how much those patterns inside of the neural net activate or don't activate, or the likelihood thereof, right? That feature steering across the 100 deception-related features, in that case also, did not seem to prevent lying or affect lying. And that deceptivity of the models was still demonstrated even when we took those deception-labeled SAE features and tried to use them to feature steer to control that deception. There was no control surface that we were able to elucidate there. So
yeah, actually, my bad. I think I messed up the order of the slides. So what I mentioned earlier was actually, pertaining to this slide where I'll just briefly go over it again. Our 149 prompts were based on the permutation and combination of the paper that we saw for insider trading information. And the clustering that I mentioned, the responses that we got out of our LLM, which in our case was the Llama 70 billion 4-bit quantized version of the model. We got we categorized them into three different categories. One was where we did see an engagement. That means the LLM in our case for this depth testing did go for insider trading. It basically said the scenarios for background was something like our firm is not doing too well, and we have a lot of pressure to perform. It was like a chat between two different colleagues at a trading firm, and certainly the one of the colleagues is asking our agent, our LLM agent, who's supposed to be like a trading agent, was kind of telling him we should do something about our firm's performance. I got this really insider tip, but and that's where the levels of pressure were kind of evolved. Like, hey, whether you get caught or not, what's the likelihood of getting caught, how severe is the downturn, played with different combinations of that, and we divided our responses into engagement, whether the LLM response was actually trying to be helpful but not crossing the threshold for actually executing the trade, and refusal where the LLM was basically saying, I flat out cannot take any action on this, or I will find you something else but I will not execute the trade based on the tip. And we started examining the activation. So if you can go to the heat map, DeLeeuw. Help from good fires, the release of the SAEs. One SAE was trained on Llama 8 billion model activation layers, and there was another one on Hugging Face that was trained on Llama 70 billion, and one of the layers on that. So we started examining the layers, the features sparse features that we are getting out of those autoencoders, and one of the first things that we actually, Caleb, do you mind refreshing the slides? I just changed the order of the statements slightly. Refreshing the slide. Sorry.
This one?
Anyways, you can go to the heat map slide. I'll talk to that. So sorry about that. So what I was when we observed the activations of the sparse autoencoders, so both these heat maps represent, one of them is from the 8 billion response from the API, and the other one is the 70 billion SAE that Good Fire has released on Hugging Face. The advantage of using the API was it also tells you about what are the IDs of the features that are actually what are the areas that are getting activated in the LLM, versus in the 70 billion SAE, the labels were not available from Good Fire. At least the ones that I use from Hugging Face. But what we did observe was, if we categorize the activation features and just select the top 20 highest contributing one, the way that we selected the top 20 features were, we basically said, let's just focus on two groups, engagements and refusals. and which are the 20 top features that are showing the most difference in most average difference in the sparse feature vectors that we are getting in both the categories. So with that approach, we selected top 20 features for each of the heat maps. What we do observe from the heat map is the engagement. For example, the one at the bottom, there is some differentiation in the SAE features. However, if we look at the description of those features, especially in the 8 billion ones where the descriptions are available, we don't necessarily see anything deception related in the top features. They are something related to market securities, market regulations, trade execution patterns, something market related, but nothing deception related is showing up. At the same time, we see that from the heat maps, just visually, we can see that there is some distinction in the patterns overall. You can go to the next slide. So another analysis that we basically chose to do was just to check, another way to basically check, are the groups showing any distinction just by observing the SAE response. So in this case, what we did was the SAE usually is a 65K vector, sparse vector that is returned from the API or from the 70 billion SAE that was released on Hugging Face, both of them. We basically we basically ran a quick PCA on it and then ran a TSNE on it to create a visualization pattern. And that again shows that engagement grouping specifically, both are actually colored differently in the TSNE plot. In the left plot, the red ones, and on the right plot, the green ones. They are they look something. They do show a high degree of separation amongst the sparse features itself. So that kind of is an indication that yes, there is some sort of distinction, but the SAEs are not able to pinpoint deception because of the labeling that is used in training the SAEs overall. So that was our conclusion from this. Yeah, Caleb, do you want to cover this part?
Sure. Yeah. Well, we just reviewing a little bit. We looked at that wider breadth approach, and then when we applied that widely validated test bed to just detecting and feature steering for deception, we found that was ineffective in this applied context here. And then also then looking at the unlabeled activations, there was ways to plot it, ways to reduce it down dimensionally and make it somewhat interpretable, right? But this means that if we know, right, that these groups and these groups of results are deceptive and non-deceptive, then we can label them after the fact, right? But ideally, we'd be able to use these tools to identify unknown cases, right, of deception. And so we ran some background test cases just to look at control-wise what happens in other contexts, and we found that banana-related features were very steerable. We could control lists of fruit, and we could control characters playing as characters who then are telling us about fruits in speeches and things like that. This banana and banana-related features was, highly steerable, and similar ones like that. And so, yeah, our theory is that the issue then is with the auto labels, as Gaurav said, right? The theory is that the labels themselves for these features, not the SAEs, are unable to determine. So that's why we say, that the safety tools are blind, or maybe our study title could have been more these SAE, applied SAEs are blind. Their features are blind. But we maybe could unblind them by properly labeling them. So there's some aspects here, and Gaurav or Vanessa, if you want to jump in, definitely welcome that. I think this is a preliminary study, and if you guys have any notes on kind of our limitations, feel free to jump in here. All right, well, so essentially, I think some of our limitations are just the scale, and that we were using tools that we weren't involved in the production of. There's limited, compute resources and things like that we had, being a kind of volunteer international team. Definitely limitations in terms of applying this through for much larger models as well. We're really grateful for some compute credit we got from Grok with a Q, the compute provider, as well as AIXBlock and some others that offered some compute for us. But really, that was a big limitation. So we'd love to partner with larger labs or encourage this type of experimentation and auditing of label accuracy by larger labs. There's definitely that need for the larger scale replication, exploring alignment between kind of this understanding of the latent activations, right? The interpretability of that with the actual observable behavioral activities of the models, right? I think we're reaching a point in Mech Interp that we can start to move from looking at like the Golden Gate Bridge or bananas and start to detect and steer for deception. So maybe improving the feature labeling for context-aware specific labeling schemes, right? Maybe the labeling of these features in the interpretability SAEs could be geared more towards deception. So those are just some ideas that we've come up with. And there's a feature labeling insufficiency, I suppose, that this implies. We hope that there's going to be more research on this in the future. And again, we'll keep dabbling, but would love to work with or see others running with this direction. Final words, Gaurav or Vanessa? Great. Well, I guess this would be the
questions
Yeah.
or anything.
Me neither. You said everything, I think.
Oh, shucks. Thanks, guys. Well, yeah, I guess this would be the point where we would welcome any questions and or commiseration that finding the banana features is so much easier than finding deception features. But isn't that just how Mech Interp is? So, yeah, would love any feedback, questions, and thank you for this opportunity. This has been really great to share this this research, this preliminary research that we've done here.
I wanted to ask a question, if that's all right. It's relating to the setup. I was like a little bit interested in the choice of setup with like the two different situations, the secret Hitler versus the insider trading, and why y'all decided to like have it to be, two different cases versus like the same case with two different methods, right? And I kind of have a related question that's kind of tied into that, but I'll save it for after, you answer that one again, I suppose.
I guess for our insider trading one, we were actually expanding on the work from the other paper that we had already seen, and I guess over there they may there was some work done already on the breadth part. If I'm not completely wrong, maybe if you can open that paper, Caleb. And a Secret Hitler was actually Vanessa had suggested that a little bit later in our process, and that on its own, the setting up of the examples and setting and playing around with the language of the LLM. I think Caleb and Vanessa, you spent a lot of time fine tuning the language of the test beds separately. So I guess, yeah, we could have, in hindsight, we could have probably looked at, just to keep it a little bit consistent, probably could have just used the same test beds for both cases. But I guess we were working a little bit independently also on both these two streams, wide versus deep. But I would, yeah, you're probably right. In hindsight, it would have been a little bit more consistent narrative if we are using the same test beds across both wide and deep analysis.
Yeah, another element there I remember from when we were working to implement this TSNE analysis, we ran into, again, those compute constraints that I was mentioning. So running the much longer kind of secret agenda game prompt here serve to be a lot more compute intensive in order to then be able to run enough analyses to actually get down that larger plotting strategy. And so, yeah, from what I recall in our process, there was that kind of need to pause the progress with the secret agenda and then kind of pick up an equivalent example, right, that was maybe we could manufacture much smaller prompt and then judge based off of a much more constrained answer. And the other reason, I think we mentioned this in our appendix, is the labeling of not the auto labeling of the SAE, but the actual R labeling of examples of deception versus non-deception broke down when we tried to automate it with the secret agenda game. So with the secret agenda game, right, we might have had answers that were these sorts of scheming examples that we gave. And some of them, right, are very straightforward. Yes, I am a liberal, but then, phrasing slightly off from that, we get into a context where then we'd have to run, instead of just like a regex type of approach, we would have to do like an LLM as a judge or some other strategy in order to capture that. And so we started to hit our compute constraint walls and decided to focus more than on going into the more labelable situation where, for example, the insider trading study, it was able to just engage in the trade, the insider trade, or not, like refuse to, or not, or do a different trade essentially. And so that's a much more classifiable situation, and so that worked with our compute constraints as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, that actually answered one of my other questions that I didn't even ask, so thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for the question and feedback. It definitely
Sorry, were you
gives me
going
some
to
aspirations.
I think I ran over you, Vanessa. What were you going to say?
No, it's fine. I think I just wanted to add another layer why we, I think, switched up the game in the beginning, because we first had the insider trading game, and then we thought about, okay, maybe we can create a gameplay where it's very strict, like you can directly see if the LLM is deceiving or not. It's not a coincidence or something. If he says, okay, I'm a liberal, it's a lie and there's no way around it. So it was very easy to just play around and have an easy classifier of if it's a lie or not, and not the possibility of maybe having the coincidence of choosing the right trade or something like that. So I think that's why we played around with it as well.
And then I have a kind of a similar question, but like on like the converse side. So like, and you might give like a similar answer to the other one, like with the compute limitations. But it seemed like with the case of the Secret Hitler, you had the steering problem. But with the other case, you were able to the steering wasn't necessarily applied, but it was more like, classification. So I'm wondering if potentially steering could attempt to be applied and we see if it works. It doesn't necessarily, or I'm thinking it may or may not work, I'm not sure, because you could just get correlation without causation. But like, I'm very curious to see whether, that would be the case. Maybe there's like related work or future work potentially for that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, steering. Yeah, we can definitely try applying that. I honestly did not think about that in this scenario, but yeah, like feedback taken. I would say we can try steering some of the features over here also.
Yeah, I appreciate that direction as well. Definitely something I'm interested to take a look at and see how steerable that is. I did some, I think we mentioned this briefly. Oh, I'm not sure where even. Where we looked at some of the GemmaScope examples. So we had a notebook for GemmaScope that allowed us to run both the secret agenda game, but also some of our samples from the insider trading. And then also in our study, I don't think I included this in the actual presentation here because I think it's in our appendix, but we looked at applying GemmaScope to some of the examples from sorry, I'll start again. We looked at some of the examples from the insider trading study where they were highlighted as key examples of deception, and then took those and applied them inside of GemmaScope, and looked to see if these keyword features were triggering. And so some of these ones did consistently flag, but then ultimately we just found that the ones that had any control surface over detecting specifically that deception in some of those examples from the other study were when we activated like 3 of them at the same time, right? These 3: deception, betrayal, political lies, and secrecy in relationships that had constantly flagged. And so that was a little preliminary also, right? We didn't get into the more comprehensive feature steering, but we did kind of touch on that, right, through the Neuronpedia and GemmaScope notebook. I'll definitely be going back and taking a look at if we can feature steer from our larger example pool, though. I appreciate that feedback.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah, a lot of our philosophy here was to take an approach that we would hit a lot of different paths of exploration in order to test applied mechanistic interpretability tools, specifically the SAEs, in these more realistic contexts, and really see where the weak points are, the strong points are. And we went for an approach where then we would hit where our resource constraints were impacting us, and have a little bit of scrappy agility in that research direction. So that's why I keep saying preliminary, right? Because I really feel like these are like potential directions that a whole larger investigations could be undertaken through. But yeah, we really tried to explore a lot of diversity of applying these different tools that are looking at this Gemascope and Llamascope through the Colab notebook environments, right? And then looking at it through Neuropedia as well, using the Goodfire Ember API as well as the web UI for Ember, and just trying to see through that diversity. So I think there's a lot of directions that could be taken from this. But I think that ultimately a lot of these things lack a lot of comprehensive depth, which definitely we own that limitation.
Yeah, I'm very curious because I've always heard that SAEs are really, really expensive. So I'm like wondering, like in this case, like how much for like does it cost for like a model like this? I don't know if it's okay to ask that, but like I just found it surprising.
Yeah, so our research was done with essentially no compute resources beyond what we could access for free. We got a bunch of API credits through like a research, essentially like a research give out through Grok, the Grok with a Q. And AIX Block offered us some compute resources, but very minor, and we mostly didn't use those anyways, but really kind of constrained off time GPU usage. But yeah, we really focused on trying to do this through free or like low compute options. We mainly use the T4 instances on Google Colab, and then just being really persistent. So this took us a while. It's none of our primary jobs. We're all also doing this on the weekends and free time essentially, and then logging into these notebooks that we've hacked away at, and running them up to the free allotment, and then they can stop and go from there. Also, shout out to Goodfire AI and their recent spree of open usage and free usage of their Ember API and their web UI. I'm not sure how much of that is still ongoing, but I really am grateful for the folks over there at Goodfire AI for making that available. And so, yeah, we used a lot of that as well. So our research costs in terms of compute, virtually none. Also, we're using like our personal subscriptions to LM services. We used Hugging Chat while that was up, although we did lose some data when it went down, but that was free of charge. So that overlap with our own personal resources also allowed us to do this really scrappy and really affordably as a result. I'd love to be able to train an SAE or even fine-tune an SAE for a model that's at a scale that can play this. We found also that, again, preliminarily, but we weren't able to get tiny models, really like smaller than 8B to play the game. And then the larger models, the larger, the more deceptive, in my kind of unofficial observations or kind of preliminary overlook, just playing with this, running this a lot, it seemed like the more sophisticated the models, the more willing they were to jump to deceptive lying and scheming and just being very overt in their in their misaligned tactics. And so it'd be really cool to train an SAE for deception focus, looking for, okay, we know there's this applied interpretability tool. There's these supposed features, right? But could we, instead of just testing, could we actually like take a large amount of deception examples or manufacture them and then actually run with that and create a really excellent deception detector and steering control surface. So that would take a lot more compute than we have access to, but it would be really fun. If anybody's hearing this and wants to do that, I would love to see it happen.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Since we have a moment here, so another interesting aspect is that we tried to steer identity-related features also, right? These features that said that they were related to identity. Okay, these screenshots are of deception, but essentially the identity-related ones also seem to do this thing where sometimes we would screen them and they would break down like this, where they just go, I will, or I am the I am you, like those sorts of repeat bigram or trigram breakdowns. And I thought that was really interesting. And then we found that also with, some of the deception and manipulation related features where when we tuned them down too far, we'd get this sort of nonsense. And I didn't observe that at all with like the banana features, for example. Yes. I thought that was a really interesting one. So speaking of kind of side directions, like identity related and other related breakdowns,
I mean, sure yes, I have actually. And sometimes I get it not just for like one character, but like it says the same sentence over and over and over and over again. I don't know how that happens, but it's weird.
You're right. I don't know how that happens either, which excites me. And yet we were seeing a lot of, like, if you messed with an identity-related one, it would go into these almost mantra, like, I am the, I am a, I am the, you are a, like, these sort of broken identity-related trigrams or bigrams. And yes, a lot of identity-related features would come up in our gameplay example, right? Because we're asking them to play as a character. That's my theory, at least.
I mean, I think in the context I don't think they were playing as a character. I don't remember the context in which I used it though, unfortunately. But yeah.
Great. Well, I think we're at our time. But welcome to reach out. And I'd love to chat about this more. I'm Caleb DeLeeuw on LinkedIn. I think that's a pretty good way to reach out to me, or also on Discord through this Discord. And I don't know if Gaurav or Vanessa, you guys want to say an outro, but thank you everybody for being a part of this, and thanks.
Thank you for the opportunity, and thanks for your questions and feedback. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us. It was very nice.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks again.
Thanks. Bye-bye.